Hello and welcome to the Beniverse. And tonight, Halloween ends. We are talking not just Halloween ends, we are talking the whole David Gordon Green trilogy of new Halloween movies. That's what inspired this month for us. Oh no, Halloween's 2018 was knocked down there by my roommate Tris. This is what inspired it. We all were talking about Halloween ends. We all knew we were going to see the movies. Tris and I decided let's talk about them live on air and discuss them all. With that said, we are doing that today. We end this trilogy with the newest 2018, 2021, 2022 Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Joining me today, as he has done this whole entire series, is roommate Tris.
Hello.
You ready?
Yep.
You ready to get into this?
I know it's going to be a debate.
Yeah, this is, for those who don't know, this is where we're probably at our biggest contention. For the most part, Tris and I have been relatively on the same page for a lot of these movies. There might be aspects he likes that I dislike a little bit more, or vice versa. But for the most part, our general consensus of the movies, when you boil it down, are going to be largely the same. That is not going to be true today. For David Gordon Green's trilogy, we're going to get contended. We have very different ideas of this movie. If you've seen my review of Halloween Ends on the Beniverse channel, you know what my thoughts are on this movie. And if you know that, you know that in opposite, Tris is in complete opposite of me. He likes these movies. So we're just going to talk about them like that. And Tris, with that all said, let's just kind of start from the beginning. 2018 Halloween gets announced. It is going to be directed by David Gordon Green, a guy who's been doing films for a while. He's done comedies such as Pineapple Express. He's done Your Highness, but he's also been working in larger, just Hollywood in general. He's done dramatic films like Stronger. He's been a guy present. Danny McBride, very much known for his comedic sensibilities, again, being the star of films like Pineapple Express, being in the show Eastbound and Down. They have this idea. Let's reboot Halloween. Let's take the trend of only caring about the first film, ignoring the rest of the legacy that has followed after it. I've said it for Halloween H2O. I don't care. I don't care that it gets rebooted. If that's the story you want to tell, that's the story you want to tell, and I'm not going to begrudge you. I still have those films. I can still enjoy those films. I never really care if something gets rebooted, remade, etc., etc. That's what my feelings going into Halloween 2018 were. I had optimism because there had just been a slew of comedic talents working in horror and doing really well. You had Jordan Peele with Get Out in 2017. You had Jason Bateman direct The Gift. You've had other people whose names I'm sure I am forgetting right now, but they've done it. Seth Rogen goes into superhero action. You have these comedians who are just proven time and time again. They don't only have to make comedies, and they are some of the most interesting voices in Hollywood. And I think that's the case here with Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. But Trish, throwing it to you right now, what were your thoughts pre-2018 when you hear the news, we're getting Halloween rebooted, it's coming back? What were you feeling?
I was excited, but really disappointed.
That it was coming back, or why?
I was disappointed because I was really hyped for Halloween 9.
Oh, okay. So you wanted the sequels.
I wanted Halloween Resurrection to be kind of continued and ignored.
Yeah.
But I will say I was still really hyped for the movie because I'm a big Halloween fan, and I was interested to see on how this was going to play out. Of course, I had already been used to timeline splits in this franchise, so let's just add another one.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see what they did, and I was pleasantly surprised. I love this movie so much.
Yeah, this is definitely the least divisive of the three, is Halloween 2018. It's definitely my favorite of the three. Let me ask you one more question. Did these filmmakers in any way get you excited? This pitch that they have, like this idea that not only are we going to reboot it, it's going to be told with modern sensibilities. They're using the buzzwords. We're going back to the basics. We're doing Carpenter's version. Did this all serve to enhance or disappoint you initially?
Initially, I was disappointed, but then as the trailers started coming out and more hype for the movie came out, I just ignored it and got more excited.
Yeah, I was very much of the idea of like, okay, to me, there was one Halloween film that really mattered. Now, again, I'm not a huge Halloween fan in 2018. I think I watched the majority of them post this movie, hearing the recaps, thinking like, oh, okay, I like that idea. That sounds interesting. I'm getting more into horror at this time. And it comes out. And I think the big thing that should also be talked about, we've talked about the trends of Halloween. What studios that they always kind of feel like to some point that they're following a trend going on in Hollywood. Whether that's Friday the 13th, largely inspiring how Halloween 2 plays out, whether that is H2O being very heavily inspired by Scream, whether that is Blair Witch, Resurrection, even Zombie himself is like one of the most important indie horror directors in the late 2000s, and those films take the zombies aesthetic. This one does that, but not in the aesthetic wise. This was like, okay, Halloween is going to align themselves with maybe the most important horror company working today, and that's Universal's Blumhouse Studios, run by Jason Blum. They produce these films. They're the ones who have been giving us horror for basically now years. I mean, of course, probably most famously, they do Get Out in 2017, but that's not where they end. I mean, they launched Scott Derrickson's career with Sinister. They do all that. You have a point to make here.
Just so you're aware, I think it's Bloomhouse.
No, it's Blumhouse.
It is Blumhouse?
It is Blumhouse, 1000%.
I've heard everyone else call it Bloomhouse.
No, because his last name's Blum. That I'm positive because I've heard interviews with him.
Oh, okay.
But yes,
sorry.
No, you're all good.
Just wanted to make sure that we weren't mispronouncing.
No, you're chill. They're the studio. They're the horror studio at this time. They're making hit after hit. They have this basic model of making a horror film. Let's make it on the cheap. Let's give it a very talented director or very special type of talent, and then let's get actors to fill it out. Maybe one or two notable names, but then the rest a bunch of smaller names who kind of get to prove themselves in horror. And that's been the model ever since, and it's proved pretty successful for them. Like I said, even today, when they release Halloween Ends, they're still one of the horror companies. Now, I think A24 and even Warner Brothers division at Dimensions with The Conjuring. No, it's Touchstones, I think. Actually, it's Touchstones with The Conjuring. They've definitely made their mark in horror since 2018, and they've been doing a lot more, and people have been really, especially in the case of A24, it really feels like they probably took the leap over Blumhouse. But it's not undeniable that these studios are all kind of competing for each other. But in 2018, Blumhouse is that company. They're the people doing the most interesting horror, or at least doing the most interesting mainstream horror. And with that all said, this movie comes out in October of 2018 to great reviews. Absolutely great reviews. You and I see it, I want to say, if not opening weekend, opening week for sure.
I saw it opening night.
Yeah, and I definitely saw it. I want to say I saw it within the week of it being released. And let's just talk about that theatrical experience. What were your thoughts walking into and then walking out of Halloween 2018?
I was really excited because it was my first Halloween movie in theaters. And I really just wanted to be entertained. I was not anticipating to be scared. And I was absolutely terrified of Michael Myers in this movie.
Yeah.
when it hit me what the ramifications are that Lori is not his sister, that everybody is a potential victim, it it just became a more visceral like fear, like this could happen to anybody.
And I think that is the big point of what David Gordon Green understands so well in this first film. Let's take off all the mythology, basically all the baggage Michael Myers has ever come with. Let's remove that from him. Let's remove that from Laurie Strode, and let's get back to the fundamentals of this: a killer chasing somebody, and this time the difference is the killer, or the one being chased, is now prepared and expecting this. When I walked into the theater, I was definitely apprehensive. Again, I haven't hidden it. I'm not always the biggest horror fan. I'm probably most critical of this genre because I think this is a genre that can easily just not even just fall apart, but this is a genre for me that I think can feel really lazy and contrived. So going into this movie, I was apprehensive. I had heard a lot of positive reviews. I heard some people also say there's some really dumb stuff in the movie. I walk into the movie, I'm in the theater. What shocks me so quickly is how much fun I'm having in this movie. I think that's largely due to Laurie Strode. I think Jamie Lee Curtis is such a powerhouse in this movie. She's leading and commanding this movie in really spectacular ways. And it's, again, this kind of cat and mouse game throughout of the psychology of being chased by Michael Myers and then 60 years later. I mean, to the point that, yes, is the film a horror film by the end of it? Yes, it is. It's also just a straight up action thriller by the end as well. I mean, it is at times Laurie Strode chasing Michael Myers. It becomes a Predator movie in the essence of survival. And it just strips it down to its barest bones. And I was really impressed with that feature. And I had a lot of fun. I think the humor is really well used in this film. I think this is what David Gordon Green really captures, especially in this first Halloween. There's a lot of jokes that really land for me in really good ways. I think the babysitter joke with the child is really funny, where he runs when he sees Michael Myers. I think there's a lot of really well used moments of humor to bring you back in, like remind you this is a horror film, you're here to have fun. They give that strength to Laurie Strode. She's not someone who's just there to be killed, attacked. They give her the dignity of a real performance that Jamie Lee Curtis is actually able to bring dimensions to. Same with Michael Myers. There's a scene really early on, and I think it's supposed to be the scene, and you'll probably agree. It's the scene really early on when we see Michael basically upgrading his weapon. And they do the whole classic tracking shot from house to house. It's not particularly gratuitous. It is largely subtle, especially compared to some other scenes in the movie. But it's kind of this reminder of like what Halloween is, what John Carpenter intended to do within the first film. And there's the scene in it where where Michael Myers is looking at a baby, and you just think, oh, he's going to kill this baby. I mean, we've been now used to Rob Zombie's version of Halloween. It's just something so cruel and sickening that Michael Myers would do, that the fact that he just kind of tilts his head and looks at it and walks away actually makes it scarier, because you have this character that you no longer know how to predict.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite Michael moment in this trilogy.
I would agree, yeah. I would 100% agree with that assessment. Please, I cut you off, but what is it about Michael Myers that works in this film for you?
The performance. The fact that it's kind of a mystery of what his intentions are, because they go back and forth talking about how, is he after Laurie? Is he after everybody? Who is he? And that mystery just makes him creepy. The lack of mythology is just really, it just does something to the nerves with this movie.
Yeah, it plays on a really human emotion. right from the get-go, where it's you automatically place yourself in the feet of Laurie Strode and the Strode family. I think everyone in this cast is really well. Is cast really well. I think Judy Greer is exceptional as the daughter in this first film. I think the granddaughter is really well played. I think everyone comes to play in this first film. I don't have a lot of criticisms of this film. I will say there are scenes where I think the film is maybe trying a little too hard to be the original Halloween, where it's just like, okay, maybe it kind of has that Force Awakens issue where it has to be so overtly familiar for people who have lost interest in the franchise.
Well, okay, so if we're going to call, like, Halloween H20 the Screamification, I think Halloween 2018 is the Force Awakens-ification.
It is. You're totally right. It doesn't follow the trend of horror, but it does follow the larger trend of Hollywood at this time, which is the forcification of it. Let's bring back everybody. Mm-hmm. Let's have a grand old time. And
let's go back to basics. Let's kind of reboot it, but not reboot it.
It feels safe.
Yeah. But it's in a much more successful way. Oh, I did it again. It's in a much more successful way than I think Force Awakens does it.
I think it's a little bit more subtle than Force Awakens.
Yeah.
In a lot of directions. There are some elements of this movie that do genuinely bother me. I've never been a fan of the psychiatrist in this movie. The whole fact that he's like obsessed with Michael Myers and then he puts on the mask. If he just never put on the mask, I think I'd be a bigger fan of this movie, or at least of that scene. It's the scene where he literally, he takes off the mask on Michael Myers, he's wearing it, and then Michael Myers kills him in a really grotesque fashion. That feels a little bit more like the Halloween sequels to me, where I'm just watching something, I'm like, oh, okay, the point is we're supposed to enjoy watching a character get brutally killed in this scene.
I initially was like, oh god, the horror fans are gonna rip this scene to shreds. But I think I'm just indifferent about it. Like, I'm not really personally affected by it. Like, it's just a scene that happens now, and I have to watch it.
Yeah, that scene is the one that's always been affected me. And the second scene is, I've never liked the podcasting storyline of this movie. I think that's just kind of a lazy, kind of modern device to just bring in, like, oh, let's bring in this true crime wave to Halloween. And I think it just falls apart and feels like the issue is it spends so much time in it with the very beginning of the setup for us to all know, okay, these two characters have to die. It's not particularly interesting.
I think if you think about, like, the true crime trend and some of the negative aspects of it, it could be interesting, but they don't really do anything with that aspect. I mean, actually, no, I'm going to take that point back. They are kind of... It kind of goes into the shittiness of true crime with their interview with Laurie.
Yeah, I mean, just almost, again, this exploitation.
Yeah.
Of Michael Myers, the event, which becomes really interesting because this is David Gordon Green in this scene, the scene that you're talking about where he's, like, interviewing Laurie Strode and it feels a little exploitive. That is kind of the thesis, the narrative that David Gordon Green then crafts for the trilogy. That's essentially the idea that he wants to play on. And in Halloween, he really isn't allowed to do it. Once it's like, okay, you've proven this film can be a box office success. You've proven you can direct this movie. You can kind of do your own story type. That is the story that is David Gordon Green is most interested in sharing about. This idea of like, okay, what does it mean to basically prop up a killer? Mm-hmm. And use a killer is for entertainment, essentially, is what the films become. But I think you and I would probably safely agree, this is my favorite of the trilogy, of this David Gordon Green trilogy. I think it's the most fun. I think it also has the most satisfactory conclusion of any of these films where it is just straight up Laurie fighting Michael. I think it's all so well done with Judy Greer like having this moment where she's panicking when it comes face to face with Michael Myers, and then it's all figured out that it's a ploy, that she's trying to tempt Michael Myers. All the stuff where it's the reverse Laurie Strode attacking Michael Myers like he stalked her in the first movie, them doing the same tricks in that. I think it all works. The scene where Michael Myers looks over and the balcony and Laurie Strode is not there, great callback. It is a great use of nostalgia to get us to feel a certain way. Would you say the nostalgia is overdone, or do you think it's like just at the right level?
I think it's just at the right level, and I think they play on nostalgia to create in a meaningful way. Like when Laurie disappears, it's not just to be a callback, it's also to be like, oh god, what's going to happen next? Oh god, what's going to happen next? Oh god, oh god, oh god. It's not just like misusing nostalgia to be like, oh look, we watched the first movie, you know?
Yeah, it respects what Carpenter does, and it respects the franchise in a really fun way. And that also just feels like a very Laurie Strode element. I think Laurie could come off as maybe a bit too, I don't want to say aggressive in this film, because that's definitely not the right word. There is a bit of a, not wackiness to her performance even, but there is a bigness to Jamie Lee Curtis in this film. If you look at the difference between Halloween 20 years later versus 2018's Halloween, a lot more of the emotion is internalized in Halloween 20. In this film, it is very much external. Michael Myers is back. He's coming to kill me. I'm planning on killing him. I have this whole setup. I'm considered the crazy kook in this town for all this behavior. There is definitely a bigness to the film, and I think that is, again, the idea of bringing this film into a modern entertainment to bring it back to a blockbuster. I think if you had something more internal, this film is a success, and maybe even a better success. But ultimately, it's not as well as a financial success. I think the fact that you get to see Jamie Lee Curtis play it big helps ultimately the success of this trilogy. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay, perfect. With that all said, that's all my really big thoughts on Halloween 2018. There's not a lot to say about this film outside, and one of the reasons I don't want to spend a lot of time on each of these movies breaking down the plot, our favorite kills, all of that. Since Halloween 2018's been out, this is the first Halloween series that exists on the internet. These are films that have been dissected scene by scene by other podcasts, by other YouTube channels, by everyone, by articles, by newspapers. Anyone who covers Halloween films, anyone can cover them these days. So breaking it down scene by scene, I didn't think felt as rewarding. It'd be like breaking down Star Wars scene by scene. If you want that, there's multiple channels that do that much better than I could ever do it. So that's why we're not going to go scene by scene for these movies. We're going to go over overarching thoughts and probably a little bit more of critiques and praises of it, which I think now leads us pretty naturally to Halloween Kills, which, Tris, could you do me a favor real quick? Could you grab Halloween Kills, and could you do one of my favorite segments on the show where I just have you read the back cover for 30 seconds so I can enjoy some refreshing water?
The Halloween night when Michael Myers returned isn't over yet. Michael manages to free himself from Laurie Strode's trap to resume his ritual bloodbath. As Laurie fights for her life from injuries from her last encounter with Michael, she inspires her daughter Taryn, granddaughter Allison, and all of Haddonfield to rise up against their unstoppable monster. The vigilante mob then sets out to hunt Michael down. Once and for all, evil dies tonight.
This is Michael Laws. This is the revolution against Michael Myers. Do you hear the people of Haddonfield sing? That is what this movie is. It is the mob mentality of this movie is very much key to understanding Halloween Kills. And I guess let's just jump into this movie. Tris, I saw this movie in theaters. I don't know, did you see it in theaters or did you see it at home?
I watched it at home.
Yeah, this is, for those who don't remember, it comes out October 2021. COVID is still pretty actively alive at this time. Not saying when we're recording it right now it's not alive, but at that time it's the height of Delta, essentially. It's a second wave. Movie theaters are tentatively opening back up, but they're not to full capacity. I think at this point, I'm trying to remember if it's changed. I think movie theaters are about like 50% capacity in October of 2021. I see this movie in theaters. Let me explain the experience. And can I just say it's unfair to this movie to give some of the critiques that I'm going to give to this movie without explaining the context of which I saw this movie. I don't know if I've actually ever shared this story with you. I saw it a week before Halloween. October 31st, Halloween. I saw it in theaters at my local theater. I'm in, I think, like the fifth or sixth row. It's a pretty empty theater when I get there, which is why I decide, I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable doing this. I feel comfortable being in the theater. I do a double feature of this movie and Venom Let There Be Carnage. I do this movie first. I get there, movie starts, first 15 minutes happen, and then everything goes wrong. A group of, I wish they were teenagers, but they weren't. I really wish they were teenagers, but they were probably above the age of you and I, Tris, where I'd say they were probably inching towards their late 20s, maybe even early 30s. It was a group about 20 people deep, all being rowdy as hell. I mean, one of the worst, maybe the worst movie theater experience I've ever had. They are just straight up, they get into the movie 15, 20 minutes late. They're all actively talking, like shouting at each other. They all sit down. They all take forever to sit down. They're all just like talking during the movie. I'm going crazy. And I'm like looking around, and my auditorium probably has, I'd say, about 20 other people in it. I'd say before they got in, it was at maybe like 1/4 capacity, maybe 25% of an audience was in there. It was a Saturday night again, like right before Halloween. So there was definitely some popularity for this movie. Everyone else is like watching the movie like pretty like candidly, like nothing's happening, which is driving me even more insane. I'm like, how is no one like just being annoyed as I am right now? Like, how is no one else seemingly expressing their frustration as I feel right now? But anyway, so it's going on. They then start throwing popcorn at each other, like in the movies, like just straight up, like you see popcorn like flying around. Somebody goes to the bathroom and they're like pranking the person as they come back, like they like pop out to like jump and scare them. It's so much yelling. I talk to the usher because eventually I just have enough of it. I'm like, I leave the theater and I'm like, this is like just not okay. You need to kick these people out. Like, this is not movie theater etiquette. Like, this is quite obvious. I don't know how anyone else hasn't brought it up to your attention, but they need to go. And the usher comes in. He sits there for about 5 minutes and leaves. And here's the thing. I don't blame the usher. He was he was significantly younger than me. I'd assume he's under the age of 18 when he's doing this. I never blame an usher for not wanting to kick out a group of 20 to 30 rowdy people. That's not their job. Even if it is technically their job, like that's just not a task that they're going to feel comfortable with. They're not going to get listened to it. And in very extreme cases, they can get in like shouting matches or worse, physical violence with it. I feel very bad for that person that I put in that position. I was hoping that the security guard would come in and deal with it. But basically, that's how I sit through the movie. I leave. I then go to Venom 2, and then they end up They also do the same thing where I don't think they paid for the tickets. They all just move their one crowd to Venom 2, and I stand up and leave. I'm like, I'm not going to watch Venom 2 under these conditions. That's my experience watching Halloween Kills. I have a YouTube review of this movie that went up probably about less than a month after I saw Halloween Kills. In that YouTube review, I am very angry about the movie in general. I don't like this movie. I have nothing but negative thoughts about this movie. I have nothing but negative experience rewatching this movie. And that's an issue with me, of course, when we're talking about this movie, where I have such a negative reaction to just thinking about seeing Halloween Kills that I can never disassociate my experience watching the film with just trying to sit there and enjoy the film. I have PTSD with Halloween Kills.
Are you okay?
I'm not okay. It was a rough day for me. It was the day that I started investing in Blu-rays again and thinking of the idea of like, okay, is it okay if movie theaters die? Am I okay just watching everything on a streaming service for the rest of my life at home?
I'm okay with that.
I'm getting every time I have a bad movie theater experience, my belief in streaming becomes greater and greater. And Tris, you didn't have this issue. You got to see this movie from the comfort of your couch. I'm sure you were in nice AC. I'm sure you had a blanket around you. I'm sure you enjoyed yourself. I'm sure you even had free popcorn.
Axe the popcorn, but yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, you enjoyed yourself watching this movie. What's your reaction watching this movie while you're seeing it for the first time?
I was disappointed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
There are things that I like in Halloween Kills. There are things I don't like in Halloween Kills. I think it's more of a killing exploitation film than the first one. Like they're it seems like apart from their thesis of mob culture is to just make Michael this unstoppable, brutal, like, killing machine. And you either like it or you don't. And I can I know I can go into Halloween Kills and get Michael Myers being a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if I'm particularly scared of this Michael Myers. I'm more scared of the one from Halloween 2018, who stalked and was more meticulous.
Watching this film again, there's something really interesting that I noticed. When we talk about Halloween 2018, we talk about the fact that it's basically a fresh air for the genre. It's a reboot. They kind of go back to the familiar, back to the safe, back to the basics. This film is not quite the level of we're going to complicate the mythology right away. It comes really close at times where you're just like wondering like what exactly is going on. There's too much fantastical elements within this film for it to be grounded in reality. So what's going on with Michael? You are right in the assessment that this film is a very Michael Myers killing exploitive film. This is the idea of like, okay, for all of you who liked Halloween and really liked those violence moments in the film, I'm doubling down on this. Like, we are full on, like, doubling down on this. We are getting more violence. We're going to get more blood. We're going to get more killing. We're going to get more gore. We're going to get just more shock. And on a visceral level, that works. On the sense of just seeing Michael Myers kill somebody in a really violent way, that there's a level of disturbing nature that comes with it. It's impossible to deny that. I mean, when you see Michael Myers just gut a guy, you're like, okay, yeah, that's pretty unsettling. I don't like that. But that's the issue with this whole film. I now am no longer afraid of Michael Myers as I am just kind of disgusted by him.
Yeah,
in this film.
Exactly. And it comes down to like, oh, I know how I would survive Michael Myers. I would get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, and this is also the classic case of a horror film not seeing other horror films, which is, the whole thesis of Scream, is you have characters who have seen horror films. And that's also largely then brought into Halloween 2018. Not saying that it takes the ideas of Scream, but it's the idea of like, okay, these characters are actually making intellectual decisions on how to beat Michael Myers. This film is like, okay, what if we don't do that? Because we need Michael Myers to basically kill hundreds of people in this movie. And for him to kill hundreds of people in this movie, we can't have these hundreds of people make any logical sense because they need to be in a spot, they need to be in a place that Michael Myers can just brutally kill 100 people with ease.
Remember,
And, yeah, go for it.
remember at the beginning of this marathon when you were like, I could stop Michael Myers by fighting him?
Listen, they could have too in this movie. None of them like go for the head again. They're bodying him.
They get headshots on him still.
But they don't cut the head off. They don't cut the head off. I mean, like, that is ultimately the issue. Like, they are fighting Michael Myers, and they are still just like, he's on the ground, and they're like, he's had enough. What? No, dismantle him. And I mean, that's what a Halloween ends. Spoiler alert, ends up doing well, where it's just like, okay, no, there's no way this guy survived unless he can just reincarnate himself. But, God, this film has some issues, and it's specifically centered around the mob issue. One thing before we get to the mob thing that I should also point out, this film does the fundamental sin of Halloween 2. Again, they put Laurie in a hospital bed for the entire movie.
Yeah.
She is doing the Jeff Goldblum exposition from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where he has the whole lines, life finds a way. While in a courthouse, or while testifying in front of Congress, actually, I think he's testifying in front of Congress. They did the same thing with Laurie Strode in a hospital, where he's like, Michael will not stop coming and killing. That is like what her role is. She got paid the easiest amount of money Jamie Lee Curtis has probably ever done. She got to just lie in bed and spout exposition about how dangerous Michael Myers is and how no one understands the threat that he presents.
Since they wanted to go back to basics, there we are. Go back to basics with Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. I wonder what happens to this trilogy if you don't even have Laurie Strode in it.
What do you mean by that?
Like, is Halloween 2018 still good without Laurie Strode?
I mean, that's such a hard question to answer because it's like, is this series anything without Laurie Strode? Like,
that's true.
That's kind of David Gordon Green. Like, he has to connect Michael and Laurie in this thing. I don't know how to answer it. I mean, I really don't, because it's like, but then I guess Halloween Ends does kind of answer that in a lot of large ways. So I guess we should like kind of shelf that conversation, because now that I think about it, Halloween Ends is kind of the answer to your question right there.
That is true. It's just, she is like not a character in this movie, and it's really frustrating.
It is.
And she's given so much gravitas and weight in the first and third movies in this trilogy that I love.
Yeah, agree.
Like, if you are
hang on. I meant one. I love one. You can jump back in. I said I love all of them.
Oh my gay. Anyway, I love her arc in this trilogy. But what's the point of bringing Laurie Strode back if you're going to do nothing with her in your middle chapter?
Yeah, listen, it's interesting that a lot of the complaints people have about Halloween ends up also being a lot of the complaints people have about Star Wars in the Disney era. And it's kind of interesting that I think the three of the each respective trilogy has those issues with them to some degree, to some fan base, in some shape or form. Not saying I share those beliefs. People quite know my love of The Last Jedi. But I think some of those complaints about The Last Jedi too, you could probably take a lot of those complaints, remove the word The Last Jedi, and just say Halloween Kills. And I think you'd have a lot of the same fundamental arguments in place for the criticisms towards this movie. Can we talk about the worst part of this movie?
The mob?
Can we get political for a little bit?
And how it basically kind of attacks BLM?
Here's what I think happened. I think David Gordon Green saw the George Floyd protest. I think he had an idea that was inspired by this. And then ultimately he makes this movie that's essentially, its mob politics are not understood. They're not clear at all. It's actually quite offensive. in a lot of sections to portion slash large chunks of this movie where it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. I don't know. I never want to take a filmmaker, judge them by the art, and then cast aspersions on their political beliefs. I don't think that's I don't think that's wise for me. I
I
think
mean,
that's
we
a
do that
really
all the time with some of them.
we do that all the time with some of them because some of them are maybe a little bit less avoidable than others. I don't want to. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I don't want to say David Gordon Green thinks badly of the BLM movement based on how he portrays mob action in this film. I just don't want to say that like explicitly that I think that or I believe that. I don't think I believe that. What I will say though is sometimes artists try to get culturally relevant, especially when it comes to horror. They have this idea that dating back to Romero's Dawn of the Dead, how that's kind of an allegory for things going on in the 1960s, all that. And I think they're like, okay, what if we made this like a movie that felt relevant? So let's give it some familiar beats or tones or imagery that we've seen the past couple of years. They see BLM, they see the protests going on. I think they can be in favor of something, in favor of BLM, in favor of protest, in favor of basically justice. And then somebody can still tell, somebody is not telling them, okay, but the way you're portraying them in this movie is offensive. And I think that's ultimately the case of Halloween Kills. You watch it, and I get the sense that it's like, okay, he's trying to do something here. I don't actually understand what he's trying to do here with his messaging, but he is trying to actively comment on a time in our history.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So, another riot that he could probably have been inspired by, January 6th.
Could he be inspired by January 6th? Does January 6th happen?
In 2021.
It does happen in 2021.
So I have maybe the reason why the message is confused is because he doesn't know how he feels about it. Because on one hand, like me personally, and you can decide to cut this out if this is too political.
No, go for it.
I wasn't a rioter for BLM, but I was a protester.
Yeah, so was I.
I was not a January 6th supporter. I think January 6th was despicable.
Yeah, so do I.
So maybe let's pretend January 6th didn't happen. Maybe Halloween Kills was a different movie, but then January 6th happens, and then the tone of the movie gets shifted.
Here's what I think about this. It's really hard to do political commentary in film.
Yeah.
Many films try it, many films fail at it. You need a clear and concise thing. Otherwise, you kind of just come off as yelling. Take a movie that I hated that came out in 2021. Don't
Halloween
Look Up.
Kills.
I did hate that movie, but take Don't Look Up. Adam McKay's like political satire. I think that movie's atrocious. I think its politics are all over the place. Ultimately, I understand that Adam McKay is trying to tell this story about essentially climate change. This is a film about the dangers of climate change and how basically we as the American public are ignoring it in favor of sensationalism, in favor of celebrityship, in favor of billionaires kind of getting to do wacky, ridiculous things. I think that's ultimately the message of Don't Look Up, poorly summarized. Halloween Kills has kind of a similar issue where I watch the film and I look at it and I think, okay, this is trying to say something about how we have to be calm and rational. We have to still channel that anger, but make it mean something a little bit more. And we have to be impactful with the way that we chance. And I think what's also interesting is I think this film is conflating true political ideas in it, as most things do. Never and nothing is ever black and white. I think what this film is both trying to do is use the imagery that we have seen in 2020 and 2021 with these protests that we've mentioned. And I'm going to clarify for my sake as well, and I'm sure you'll agree with this one easily. The George Floyds were protests. The January 6th is an insurrection. So
Yes.
when I use the word protest here, I'm commentating on the protest, not the insurrection. So let me make that just clear. I think they can. I think he can use the imagery of the protest to invoke a certain emotion, to make it feel a little bit more real or timely. But that doesn't mean that's where the political message is, because ultimately this movie's political message is kind of a little bit more, maybe not centered around cancel culture per se, but the idea of just like not doing your due diligence and just kind of going for it. Just kind of just anger that is not just or righteous or not followed up in any meaningful way. Halloween Ends definitely does this in a more explicit way. I think Halloween Kills touches on this, and it's so hard for me to comment on this because, one, I haven't seen the film in a few months, but I do recall some of these scenes very clearly. And two, because I haven't listened to what David Gordon Green says about this film. I think often the most insightful thing, I listen to Adam McKay talk about Don't Look Up. That's exactly what he's trying to say. I follow Adam McKay on Twitter. I know where his political values are. I don't know where David Gordon Green's political values are. I don't know what he believes in. I don't know how he approached making this film. I know who Adam McKay is as a filmmaker. I don't know David Gordon Green as much. The issue with that is I have trouble explaining it in my own head. So ultimately, I get left with a movie that just feels like MAGA bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me at large chunks of this film, where I'm just like, okay, this makes no logical sense. Its political messaging is weak at best, and it is it trying to be a comment on something that is it trying to be a comment on BLM protest in general? I don't know. I really don't know, but the issue is when I watch it, I do just feel like, okay, this feels very Trumpian. This feels like somebody like, see the danger in this, and it's like, you don't seem to be capturing a bigger point. That's my issues with Halloween Kills and the political branding of this movie. I don't know if it's fair criticism to throw at the movie, but I am tasked with interpreting art and making sense of art. And the issue is that's how I make sense of this art. I see this as basically a reconciling with BLM in large chunks of this movie. I don't know if that's fair. That's how I see it.
That's how I see it too. And if you took that out of the movie's still just kind of mediocre. You know?
The movie doesn't work fundamentally. It's just that this part of the movie makes it far more, I would say, unintelligible. Where I'm just like, this, it muddies everything. Where now I'm left thinking about a movie that honestly, it doesn't feel like they put that much thought into it for chunks of this story line. This film ends with Judy Greer's death. This film, the one thing I remember about this film is it just kind of ends. Michael Myers kills all the mob. It's a really bloody thing.
Uh-huh.
Judy Greer just gets stabbed. I think, is it through the neck?
No, she gets stabbed in a similar, like, way that Michael kills his sister in the original Halloween.
Okay, so she dies that way. And then the film kind of just cuts back. I think it cuts back to Laurie real quick, and then the film just kind of ends.
Yeah.
And Halloween Kills. That's the film. And it all leads up to 1 year later, Halloween Ends. Halloween Ends. Let me describe the plot as best as I can, because we do not have the benefit of the studio sending us a box cover, so for us to review it. I don't have my trash can up here. I would if it would be appropriate to talk about Halloween Ends.
Halloween Ends is not trash.
Halloween Ends is, let's get into it now because this is where our biggest disagreement is going to come. Halloween Ends follows a character named Corey Cunningham. Corey Cunningham is this guy who is a engineer right in college. He's saving up to go to engineering school. He's babysitting this kid who's been affected by the Michael Myers story. He's just really scared. There's something off about this kid, but you can't tell what. You can't. I don't know if it's supposed to be implying that the kid is a little bit possessed by Michael Myers' spirit,
What?
or something's wrong with this kid at the beginning of the movie.
He's just a brat.
I don't know. He seems a little evil.
He's just a brat.
Maybe I thought he was a little possessed. But
What?
anyway,
I,
this
how many times did you watch this movie?
I've seen it twice now.
Okay.
I the kid ends up watching, they watch this movie together, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a really good scene. Basically, the kid ends up getting freaked out. Person goes out, leaves.
He doesn't get freaked out.
Oh, you're right. This is where some of the confusion of the movie ends up with me. Please explain this scene.
Okay. So they're watching The Thing. They were told to not watch. They were told to not watch anything, and here they are watching a scary movie. The kid is scared, but also just being a complete and total asshole to his male babysitter, and that's his words. Or sorry, his words are boy babysitter. Corey then leaves the room to go get a snack, and then he hears a racket in the room. He hears something in the living room. He goes and checks on the kid. The kid's not there.
Yeah.
He searches the whole house, and the kid's not there. He hears something in the attic. He goes up to the attic. The kid locks him in the attic to try to scare him because, like I said, he is a brat. And Corey gets angry and tries breaking down the door because he's trapped in the dark in the attic, and he accidentally knocks the door into the kid, and the kid falls to his death.
Yeah, he falls from like a really tall banister and just plops to his death while his parents walk in.
Yes.
It is. So one, let me explain why I thought the kid was possessed in some way. I thought the implication was this idea that like this kid's possessed and it's basically now punishing Corey's character, and it's now just like, okay, this is the evilness of it, the evil spirit throws it on, kid's dead. Now Corey basically is cursed with what he has done. That's how I interpreted the scene. I don't actually know if it's true. You seem to disagree. It doesn't really matter because the kid dies. Here's what this scene does really well, and I have to give this scene just a ton of praise. I think it's one of the best openings we've ever had in a Halloween film. It's really unsettling. You think you know where this film is going to go. Either that the kid is going to murder Corey, or somehow Corey's going to kill the kid, or Michael Myers pops up. Somehow you just think somebody is going to die. You don't think it's an accident. The scene is so well set up where it's just like, it's such a great subversion of expectations that when it happens, it's actually deeply unsettling. And it's a great way to kick off this film with Corey basically taking the fall for this kid. Not taking the fall. Like that? Like that? Yeah. He gets blamed for this death. Now, he doesn't end up going to jail. It gets ruled an accident. But he's now a social outcast in Haddonfield. All the aspirations that he once had, he no longer has. He just works at his uncle's mechanic shop. And he's this guy who's just trying to get by and basically keep his head down. Eventually, he meets Laurie's daughter. Laurie tries getting them together because she's two damaged people who have gone through a similar type of trauma, if not the same trauma. They understand basically life and death. And then Corey does some Corey shit, and he meets Michael Myers, and then Corey puts on the mask and starts killing people, and this film goes from there. So let's talk about Halloween Ends. And you like this film.
I enjoy this film, yes.
Why do you enjoy this film?
I enjoy this film because I was just not expecting this movie to make any kind of creative choices after Halloween Kills. Like, after Halloween Kills, this feels like a completely different movie series. Like, this, it feels like a completely different director. It feels like a completely different creative team. And I was just kind of shocked the entire movie. That was my first watch through.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how I felt about it. Um, I watched it a second time, and with Laurie's final message in mind, and spoiler, obviously
Yeah,
spoilers
we're
for this,
spoiler warning. We're spoiling the living shit out of Halloween Ends.
how evil doesn't die, it changes shape. And that message just kind of hit me in the way I think it's supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
in that Michael isn't the only evil, and he's not going to be. Largely, this movie is about Corey Cunningham. It's also about Laurie dealing with her trauma. But once Michael is dead, there is still evil in the world. There's still things to be scared of. And in this case, it's the evil that has been awakened in Corey Cunningham. Now, we can interpret whether or not Corey was predestined to be a serial killer. We can
Yes.
interpret it that Michael put the evil in him. I don't know. I don't know what my interpretation is because it's a fairly recent movie and I've only seen it 3 times. But the idea of Corey Cunningham, I really like. And also, I call this movie a Michael Myers buddy cop film.
I like that a lot. I will agree with you. I think Corey's really good in this film. I
I
think
do
the
too.
actor who plays him is really good. I actually like a lot of the ideas they do with the character of Corey. I there's a lot to really like about this film, and I you are completely right. This film is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a lazy film. This is
No.
not a film that is just like we are going to play it safe and conventional. Conventional. This film is probably actually the most dangerous of the 13 Halloween films, even including like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. This one strays away from every formula you've ever understood of the Halloween franchise. It has some of those basic ideas of evil never dies, it's just reincarnated, it's reborn, however you wanted to say it. It has some of those fundamental ideas within this film. It does. But it is also commentating largely on just like why does evil exist? Like this is the only film that ever bothers to ask why does evil exist? Let me correct that. Rob Zombie does ask this question, why does evil exist? That is kind of his thesis for the Halloween films. This film is doing it in a much more I'm trying to think of the word that I would use to describe it. It's doing it in a much more subtler way. Zombie is a really harsh filmmaker. He makes his points clear. There's nothing in Zombie's film where you don't understand the point he is trying to make. He is a very direct filmmaker. David Gordon Green is not that in this film. This is a guy who's like, I'm going to introduce ideas. I'm not really going to explain them. I have obviously this whole master plan of it, but I'm not going to fill you in on what that is. It is largely up to your interpretation what happens. With scenes like you said, where Michael and Corey touch hands and now all of a sudden Corey's evil. Did anything happen, or was that just Corey kind of just feeling the gravitas of weight of who Michael Myers is and just kind of like being amazed and consumed by it? I was listening to the guys over at the Ringer podcast, The Big Picture. They were talking about Halloween Ends. And I think what's really interesting is the character of Corey that they broke down. Was there a I won't even say was there because I don't want to get into that right now. When watching this movie, Sean and Chris both had a similar reaction that I had to basically what Corey is trying to be, who this character of Corey is trying to resemble in our lives. And that is I think he's kind of this weird prototype for angry white men in America. Like, you could call it Kyle Rittenhouse, you could call it a school shooter, you could call it many of names, but ultimately, I think that's who Corey Cunningham is trying to basically be in this movie. He is somebody that is enacting extreme violence without any real motive or no real understanding on why he is doing that. And this film's trying to explain why he's doing that.
I don't get angry white man from him at all.
You don't, because I do. I do get this energy of like, they use the reference of Kyle Rittenhouse. I would agree with that. I think this is supposed to be a outcast person who just has nothing and just kind of takes a thrill in killing people and finds fun in it by the time when he becomes the killer, I should say.
I just don't think. I don't. When I think of angry white man, I think of like someone who is. Okay, let me collect my thoughts. We might
Yeah.
have to cut
And
because
let me
I
say,
haven't.
mhm. I threw this idea at you. Let me just say this one thing. I might be not misinterpreting Sean and Chris's thoughts on the big picture. I am remembering their argument to the best of my ability, and that's kind of how I remembered my feelings to it, and I remember that they lined up. If I'm at any way misrepresenting their thoughts, I do not mean to do that, and I do want to just make sure that is clear. Please check out their episode. It's a wonderful episode. Talking about Corey, and I think that's probably where we should start. Like, what
I
is he to you?
I just thought he was really unfortunate. Like there
Mhm.
are the first time I watched this movie, I did not want him to be the killer because I was rooting for him. I was rooting for him to get out of this. And then he becomes bad and suddenly I'm not rooting for him.
See, this is where you and I differ on the movie. My whole understanding of the character of Corey is actually he is a vehicle for political commentary from beginning to end. I think that is ultimately who Corey's purpose is to serve. I think he is talking a lot about. I think they use him as kind of the vessel to explain our current political situation. Not political necessarily, but use the word as you want. I hate using the word, but it's the word that's been thrown around for this movie. Is this an exploration of cancel culture? It's the question I
Oh,
asked you when you were watching this movie for the first time and I hadn't seen it yet.
for cancel culture, I'm gonna say absolutely.
This I would 100% agree. I like I said, and I hate using the term cancel culture. To me, it's accountability.
But
But
the thing that makes it kind of it it a weak commentary on cancel culture is that Corey didn't actually mean to kill that kid.
that's the issue.
He's innocent.
He is completely innocent in this movie, and that's my biggest issue
And
with
that's kind
this
of
movie.
why I don't see him as angry white man who's been canceled because angry white men are typically guilty of it.
Yeah, I know. That's the big differentiating point, and I think we agree on that point. I I think that is kind of what this movie is ultimately trying to be about. I don't even know if it's meaning to be. Maybe it's just the fact that I see this type of character. I see the way he's killing people. I see the grotesqueness to which he's killing people, and I see the pleasure that he's taking, and I just get that vibe instantaneously when watching that. Maybe that's just my own bias towards that subject or knowing what I know about current day politics slash media slash depiction slash being a guy who studied basically angry white men in history for 4 years of college. Like, maybe I just can't take that lens away. And when I see Corey, I feel like it's a commentary on people like that. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. What I will say is Corey is largely an exploration of cancel culture, or at
Yeah.
least is an exploration of cancel culture. Maybe not largely, but is an exploration. You hit on the issue I have with this film is it doesn't work. You're right, because Corey doesn't feel guilty because he's not guilty. Like, it's plainly seen that he's not guilty.
Yeah. And maybe I don't see him. I see Corey as like two different characters. The before Michael and then after Michael. So maybe I do interpret this as he's not predestined to be evil because he's just a completely different person after he is encountered with Michael, and then he goes and takes revenge on all these people who have either harmed him or harmed Allison.
Yeah, so here's how I see it. Here's how I see the Corey Cunningham part 1 and part 2, because you're right, I see it as a part 1 and part 2. There's the before and then there's the after Michael encounter. I think what the scene where Corey is basically maybe not searching for Michael Myers, but definitely there's an interest in him and then like this willingness to go back. I think that's supposed to be an exploration of the fact that like there is a certain group of people in America who chase after something that's maybe taboo, essentially.
Well, I think it's important to note he didn't actually look for Michael.
You're right, because the first time he just falls, but he goes back looking for Michael, is my point.
But that's after Michael.
That is after Michael. I see it, though, as that is a character who has now almost had the taste of blood and wants to kind of get that thrill again. That's how I interpret that scene. Like, he's just like, now that he's been exposed to it, he kind of just has to see it again. And I think that's kind of the idea that when psychologists talk about it, and again, this is something that I studied in college, when you hear people write about it, when you hear, when media writes about somebody who's done a tragedy or has done something horrible in American history. I specifically spent my research on a guy named John Hinckley, who's the guy who tries to assassinate Ronald Reagan.
Uh-huh.
And the way they write about him
for Jodie Foster.
For Jodie Foster. For our girl Jodie. Who wouldn't kill for her? Joke! That's a joke. That is a joke, FBI. I would never kill for Jodie Foster. Only slightly harm. With that said, when they write about John Hinckley after, there's this search, right? There's this big question. Why? Why did this guy do it? They end up blaming it on Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. Basically, this guy gets exposed to violence and now has a desire to chase out that violence himself and enact that violence. It then becomes more complicated than that, where it's like, no, this guy was already had some mental illness history. He then got involved with Nazism. He got involved with fascism. He was able to get easy access to guns. He lives in a state in California where Ronald Reagan just so happens to cut his funding for mental health care during that time. It's unclear if Hinckley was actually affected by that, but it's a lot of these influences being done. So that's where I think this movie is trying to go. So the media always answers it, well, how did this happen? Well, it's this. He got exposed to this. And I think that's what Halloween Ends is trying to do. How does Corey become a killer? Well, he gets exposed to Michael Myers, and anyone who gets exposed to this type of person or this type of thought, or really in quote unquote this type of media, is going to become a violent person or has the potential to become a violent person. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't even know if it fully makes sense to me.
It does make sense to me. I just picture angry white men as a different thing entirely.
Breed. Yeah, different. I get it. I get why you would think that. This is such a complicated subject that I think it's maybe the least important element of Corey, so I think we can move on from it. One thing that
we're just confused. We are confused.
I think it's because the movie's kind of confused on its own.
Yes, the movie is confused because we don't. I've watched this movie 3 times and I still don't know what to make of Corey.
And this is the most important one where if I get to watch the director's commentary on any of the Halloween movies, this is the one I'm actually the most fascinated in hearing.
Yeah.
Why essentially David Gordon Green did this, what the character of Corey means, and how he's interpreting each scene. Because again, I don't even know if I dislike how Corey's being portrayed in this movie. I just think it's messy. And because I think it's a little muddled, I don't fully understand it. Essentially, I'm left with this feeling again that I talked about, and I don't think you're left with this feeling, but I am. I'm left with a movie that feels conservative by nature, right wing conservative by nature in scenes. I don't think it's as strong as Halloween Kills, but I'm ultimately left with a movie that I'm just like, I don't think it's as smart as it's trying to be, and I think it's actually maybe even saying something slightly dangerous.
Uh, Elaborate, because I want to hear.
I
I don't typically go into horror movies with political. I mean, until Halloween Kills, at least I don't typically go into expecting political things in nature.
here,
So,
yeah. Here's what I'm trying to say when I say the word dangerous in context to Halloween Ends. I think under the wrong viewer, under maybe not even the one singular viewer, but I think movies have a chance to be weaponized and just kind of see like, well, look, this is a movie that says it like it is. This is the damage of cancel culture. This is going to be a talking point, and I've already seen it to a degree. Like this is a talking point about cancel culture. I think that when something becomes politically muddled or not well thought out, it ends up just kind of being used as a scapegoat. So when I say dangerous, I don't mean dangerous in the fact that I don't think anyone's going to dress up as Michael Myers, do all that. I don't think that's really how that works. I've disbelieved the notion that the reason John Hinckley Jr. attempts to assassinate a president is because he watched Taxi Driver. I think you could take out Taxi Driver and that incident would still probably happen. Maybe not with Jodie Foster influences on it, but still ultimately that would probably happen in the course of history. And that's kind of what I'm saying with Michael Myers in this movie. What I do see it though is a film, a group of people taking this film and getting the wrong lessons from it. And I think that's a really easy thing to do with art. I mean, hell, look at the fact that the Punisher has become a right wing symbol for a character who, by all means, hates who hates militias, who
and
hates right wing militias.
same
Same with
thing.
go for it.
Same with like Rorschach from
Rorschach.
Watchmen.
That was my next example. A guy who people take him, they weaponize him, they kind of draw inspiration from him just by the way they act, the way they move, the way they design, the way they use an aesthetic. And ultimately, Rorschach is a character that, again, one, he's a racist in the comics.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, but again, he's not for what these people are for. And that's the big kind of misunderstanding. And that's what then the Watchmen 2019 TV show explores, that there's a certain group of people that would take after Rorschach, and they're not well. And it's right wing militias. And I'm going to get blasted on the comments for that. But I ultimately, when I say dangerous, that's how I interpret the word dangerous to mean in this. I think there is a section of people who are going to feel this, they're going to see this movie and say, this film understands cancel culture. When in reality, it's again an issue where it's just like, no, it doesn't understand it because it's not cancel culture in this film or accountability, whatever you call it. We get clear evidence that this guy should not have his life ruined for this one incident. There's no
Uh-huh.
black and white, or sorry, it's only black and white in this film. There is no gray area. It is clearly that we should feel sympathy for this character. That's what I'm trying to say. Do you want to talk about the Michael influence of this film?
Uh, what Michael influence?
Michael influence by I mean the post Corey meeting Michael.
Uh, are you talking about like the Michael influence on Corey?
Yes. How do you think that works when basically Corey dons the mask? Not works like in the literal sense, like does it work within the film's context?
This is kind of something I had an issue with Halloween Kills, is that they throw kind of mythology at your face, and it doesn't feel like it's thought out. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I feel about how that's one of my issues with Halloween Ends is you can say it's up for interpretation all you want, but it still doesn't feel well thought out. Like
I mhm.
like the fact that it's not really clear if Michael is fantastical or not by the end of this trilogy is just kind of disappointing for me.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
So, okay, we'll take it as what it literally shows. Michael touches Corey. He sees, he looks into Corey's eyes. Corey looks into Michael's eyes, and he lets Corey go.
Mhm.
And then suddenly Corey has an entire personality change. He kills a homeless man. He's way more confident with Allison. He's way more confident in general. He doesn't need glasses anymore. His eyes turn dark, the blackest eyes, if you will, the devil's eyes. He's popping in and out creepily and creeping Lori out. He
No, I get what you're saying. He does all these things that imply that he has the essence of Michael Myers in him, but then he just dies, right? Like that's
yeah,
ultimately what Corey does. Like once Laurie confronts him, he dies. He doesn't stand a chance. He just gets killed. There's no really possession of him. It's not really explained. And then when Michael and Laurie finally show off, it's not like Michael displays any of these fantastical elements. It is just again, and it's the point that Laurie Strode like really drives home. Like you are just a man, and it's
yeah,
like the issue is like, but he's not. Like we literally just spent 30, 40 minutes of like what the evil that Michael possesses within him, how it corrodes and corrupts everyone around him.
yeah. And how it's corrupted the town.
Yeah.
Like, but now he's just a man again. It's you can call it up for interpretation all you want. It just feels like lazy writing.
I agree. Here's what I think it is supposed to be. I don't think the film is actually concerned with the fantastical elements. I think what it is trying to say is when we give weight to the fact of like, oh, who is this person? What do we weigh of this person? Like, oh, you meet this person instantly becomes evil. This is the influence they have. Once you strip that away, once you take that like mythology away from them, they're ultimately just a little man. That's the idea of I think serial killers is the idea, right? Like Charles Manson, if you took away all the attention he gets, if you take away any of the influence he has, he's just a crazy guy yelling on the street.
Uh huh.
But it's the power that we give him that allows Charles Manson to be Charles Manson and then enact what Charles Manson does. I think that's what this film is trying to explain with Michael. The issue is it actually takes a literal fantasy element to the character of Michael and never falls through with it. So you can do it as a kind of you can do it as an allegory for what it is supposed to be, but the exact second you add fantastical elements and then don't follow through with it, it just feels muddy.
Yeah, and
And that's go for it.
that's overall what this movie is. It's just kind of a muddy film of choices.
Yeah, because ultimately this film has to serve three masters. It has to be a film that is commentating on this character of Corey, who is this guy who is just like basically an outcast in society due to this crime he commits, or just due to this action that he commits. And now, what is this guy? How does he exist within society? And what does he bring to society? Then it also has to be this kind of Halloween spinoff. Who is Michael Myers and what is the influence he has on people? And then it's this third movie that has to be the finale between Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers.
Uh huh.
It's doing all three of those films at the same time, and it literally does it beat by beat. The first third of the film, you could call it like, oh, what is a socially outcast? What does it mean? What is the damages that it has on a person? How does that turn them to go evil? Second part of the film is Michael Myers' influence. Like, when Corey meets him, how does that change? And then the final 20 minutes are, we have to tie this all back to Laurie Strode. That is the structure of this film. We're agreeing too much.
We
You
are
sound,
agreeing.
yeah. So tell me why you actually enjoy this movie.
Well, I kind of talked about it at the beginning, but I enjoy how different it is. I don't know. I just watch it, and I'm not watching just a regular Halloween film. I'm watching something that is completely different, out of this franchise's wheelhouse. But I will say, after the third time I watched it, like, some of the more muddier things start to really drag down the movie for me.
Yeah, I I have a similar experience. First time I watched it, I was confused by the movie. Like it kind of broke me. I didn't understand how to review it. I didn't know how to talk about this movie. I didn't know how to do anything meaningful with this movie, in all honesty. Because ultimately, I'm left with a movie that every demand I've ever asked of Hollywood was kind of answered in this movie in chunks. Where it is just like, I want them, if they're going to reboot these IPs, if they're going to keep digging back to the well, do something interesting with the story. Do something unique with the story. Do something new with the story. Bring in new ideas. Don't just like rely on the nostalgia. Try something.
Uh huh.
This film does everything I ask of it. And I still end up liking it, leaving the film, and then I'm just like, I didn't like that. And I'm just like, did I not like that because I didn't like how much of a change it did in tone to the Halloween films, or do I not like it because ultimately it's poorly written and doesn't make a lot of sense? I think I'm in the latter of that's why I don't like this film. But
Well,
there are some issues of it where I'm just like, okay, but I didn't pay to see basically David Gordon Green's kind of pseudo spin-off on cancel culture. I didn't pay to see that movie, and I don't have any interest in it. If that's a movie he wants to make, he's free to. But it's so tonally different from anything that I've seen in Halloween that I just like I don't understand why it's here.
I largely agree.
Yeah.
I know this. I know you were wanting a great debate, but
No, I listen, it
this
happens.
movie, this movie is too. It's it's got too much going on for us to have black and white opinions about it.
It that's a really good way of phrasing it, that it's too muddled to be strong on it either way.
Yeah.
I Let's talk about the ending of this film, what I vehemently hated. Not fully. Okay, let's back up because I'm
Okay.
making
Now,
okay.
okay. Now we're gonna have our debate because
Okay.
I love the ending.
Okay, let's get to 2 points because I think I'm misrepresenting how I feel about the ending. I texted you after I saw this movie and I had a few criticisms of it. One of them is as David Gordon Green as a director. I think this film's mean spirited. I think this film is like grossly mean spirited. Like I mean like unpleasant to me. Where it's just like there's jokes in this movie that feel like it is completely the punchline of, oh, look what Mike, or I guess Corey, did to this character. Like, look how he mutilated this guy.
Yeah, I don't love the kills.
I hate the tongue joke where it's skipping
Oh,
over. I think it's so mean spirited.
I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, no, that for me just was like, there's too many kills like that in this movie. I think the issue people throw at Zombie, where Zombie literally has a line in the movie where eggs are just chicken abortions. Like, and they're just like, everything about the movie is foul and mean spirited and rude and just dour. I
I
have a
hate.
lot of similar thoughts on this movie where everything about this movie, I'm just like, these people are all to a degree just terrible. I don't like how any of these characters are written. Everything's too cruel. And then it has to come up because then cruel people can be killed and butchered in really mean spirited ways. And we're going to
Yeah,
root for it. The bullies in this film are horrid,
yeah.
so poorly written.
I don't like. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say they're poorly written because they act like Stephen King level of asshole teenagers,
Yeah, I agree.
but I hate their deaths. Their deaths are like Halloween 2 level of gratuitous.
They're cruel considering they're not 18. Like, right? Like, there's something about this where it's like, even in Halloween 2 or other Halloween films, when you're killing somebody, it looks like I'm killing an adult. Like,
Uh huh.
even if the actor is supposed to be playing like a 16-year-old, there's a little bit of a disconnect that I can have in this. This one, it's like, oh no, I'm actually just kind of watching a kid be brutally murdered
Yeah.
in a film. And I just don't find that pleasant. I don't find that a fun thing to watch. And I don't have any real patience for that type of killing in this movie. And I think it's just cruel in every way. What's David Gordon Green's problem with the band club? He really hates band geeks.
I honestly didn't even get that they were all in the band until my third viewing because I thought that the main kid was a jock because he acted like a jock bully.
Yeah, and I almost think that's supposed to be David Gordon Green being like a little winky to the audience. Like, this is what the modern bully looks like. They're not these cool jocks anymore in their Letterman jackets. They're these kind of just like, people who have like a certain activity or passion, whether that's being a nerd, whether that's being in the band, whatever it may be. It's just like these people just didn't feel like true, like classic bullies in any archetype, which I guess is kind of the point, and I don't mind that aspect of it. But everything about these characters, where it's just like, the issue is, I think they're too big of bullies in this film. Where it's just like, these kids would all be locked up in like a psych ward. These people, like, if this is how they acted at school, like, what are we doing here? Like, these are actually just like little demons running around. And it's not like the subtle, like, oh, well, you didn't know they were a demon. It's like, no, if this is how they were bullying people at school, these kids would have no like place. And that's to me the issue. These kids don't feel like kids. They feel like little demented Charles Mansons just running around the streets of Haddonfield.
I just kind of disagree because I know kids like this exist.
Okay, that's, yeah, it's experience. I can't fight you on that. Like I said, I just don't like the bullies in this film. I don't like how they end up getting killed. I do not
Yeah.
like the radio DJ. Like I said, to me, that's one of the most offensive scenes in the movie. Not offensive in the sense that I'm like, oh, okay, F this movie, but more in just like, what are we doing? Like, there isn't taste like still a thing? Can't we have subtlety? Can't we have like implied?
Well, the thing with Corey's kills is they feel
Cruel.
so brutal and cruel. And I think the reaction we're supposed to have is, well, yeah, they were awful to him, so they get awful deaths. And I don't know who we're supposed to root for.
I agree with that issue. That's where I have an issue with just the eye for direction that David Gordon Green has, where I'm just like, had you just gone a little bit more subtle with some of these characters, with the kills, I feel like I'm much more back in tone with this film. The issue is, up until Corey starts doing his thing with Lori, aren't you kind of just rooting for Corey? Even when he's killing these people, there's kind of this sick part of me that when I'm watching the film, I'm just like, yeah,
The
like
film
I get it. Like, we're supposed to be rooting for Corey here because that's who the film wants us to root for. And it's Corey kind of just like taking control of his own life in a really brutalistic way.
Yeah. It kind of harkens back to Halloween Kills, where we're supposed to be rooting for Michael killing a whole bunch of people. So,
Yeah, I know. It's the same issue I'm having with the film, but I think even the difference is Michael is still Michael in this film. This would be like if Halloween Kills spends the first hour of us just like watching people call Michael Myers like names. They're like,
so
"Hey,
like
you
Rob,
loser."
so like Rob Zombie's
Yes,
Halloween.
exactly. It would be that, where it is just like, hey, like, look at Michael Myers. Look at his stupid mask and all that stuff. And you just see Michael, like, getting his feelings hurt or just, like, feeling like an outcast or just having nothing to do. Him just crying in his cave alone. That's kind of what, like, that's what this movie is. That's this Halloween Ends, where we just spend an hour with this character just kind of getting brutalized. Just kind of just, like, you feel horrible for Corey at certain sections of the film. Like when the mom comes up and talks to Corey in the bar and he just ends up storming off, you legitimately feel for this character.
Uh-huh.
You legitimately have your heart a little broken for this guy, and you're just like, oh, that sucks. Like, that's really disappointing. Like, that, like, how this is. And obviously, the mother has a great reason to dislike Corey. I'm not saying that she doesn't, but it is ultimately like you are just left with this guy where it's just like, I understand why he's turned his back from society, and I understand why he's having such a hard time making a connection with Allison. And then when they form this relationship, it's actually a little sweet. I like all of that in this film.
Yeah.
And then it just goes too much, the 180 of that. Let's
When
talk about the ending of this film, which I dislike.
when you said okay, never mind. I was
Okay,
gonna
no, say what you were gonna say.
I enjoy how they kill Michael. That's what I mean by ending.
Okay, I don't know if I love Laurie Strode strapping down Michael and torturing him for a little bit. I it's a
Why?
really I don't know why. It feels a little I inhumane's the wrong word considering who Michael Myers is, but it almost feels like she's exacting revenge, right? And I don't know if I agree with that the character choice for Laurie. There's almost
After
something
after this movie?
I know what he's put her through in the films. Like I
No,
understand
but I
that.
mean like she enacts her and she spent 40 years enacting revenge.
She is enacting I don't know if it's revenge though. I wouldn't call Halloween's 2018 a revenge film. I would call that a survival film where she's like ultimately like I'm trying to get away from Michael Myers. And
Right,
yes, is the
but she
survival like
sets a trap for him.
she sets a trap for him, but this is very different. This is not only like a trap. This is like I'm going to basically give you a monologue of everything you've done. I am taking away your power. I'm running knife through your hands and you're watching like the like literal just like blood draining from him, his hands being cut open. It's very barbaric in sense. And I'm not saying Laurie's barbaric in it, but it's just a very gruesome scene that just feels a little bit lacks subtlety. It's kind of Laurie just saying like, this is for everything you've done. This is for what you did to my granddaughter. This is for what you did to my daughter. This is like for what you've done. It
Yeah.
feels very righteous, right? I don't
Yeah.
like it. I don't like it.
And I
I don't
like
like
it.
how righteous it feels.
Oh, because the woman can't have her righteous moment.
No, she of course can have her righteous moment. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is
You
like
can cut
I
that
know.
out.
No,
I'm just fucking
I
with
know
you.
you put that in there to attack me. Not attack me. I know you put that into it, make fun of me because I've made similar points in other Halloween films of
Uh-huh.
me liking that, and now in this film I'm disliking it. No, I just there's this scene right where he's getting the blood drained out. I there's
After
just
he
something
tried to choke her.
I kind of would have just preferred if she just went straight for the head and chopped it off and kind of like ends it. Like there's almost like too much of this like ritualistic killing of Michael. And I don't know. The scene, it's not that it's bad to me, it just feels hokey. I'm watching the scene and again I have to think more about why I dislike it. I'm kind of just saying this live on air why I don't like this. But I am watching the scene and I'm just like this just feels like we have to kill Michael. We have to give Laurie these big moments. And maybe it's the issue of we have to give Laurie these big moments. Maybe that's what the film should have been. Like, ultimately, Laurie's forgotten about until the last 20 minutes, and then she has to do this stuff. So maybe it's them kind of making up, like, this is Laurie's journey, just basically explained. This is everything that she thinks of Michael. This is everything that she's trying to do in this kill, on and on and on and on. For me, it just doesn't work. It's just, it goes on too long. I don't find it scary, or I don't find it in any way like satisfactory. I just kind of find it gross to watch, and it's just a scene I'm not going to rewatch in any meaningful way. I think it takes out all subtlety within the franchise, to be honest, in this scene.
I don't know. I just think I just like it.
Yeah.
So I think we just disagree.
I think we fully disagree on this scene, and I know for a fact this has been one of the more popular scenes from the movie. That this is the one where fans have really claimed the scene. I just don't. It's not for me. That's personally what it is. It's just not for me. That scene is just it doesn't work for me. I the parading him around and the town all coming. is a little bit dumb to me. I don't hate it. I don't hate it as much as I like the torturing thing. I think it's a little bit like too on the nose, but I do like that they put Michael in the shredder.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You don't like that she is killing him slowly, but you like that they put him in the shredder?
I I think there's a subtlety to the shredder scene.
You think there's a subtlety to the shredder scene? What?
I think it's a little bit more subtle. I think
What?
the imagery just isn't as violent. Like you don't actually
He
see
gets
the
put
body,
in a metal shredder.
but you don't see the body like just being
Yes,
like a
you do.
You kind of do, I guess.
What?
I just like maybe that's just like the full on like I don't okay, here's what I'm saying. I don't like that Laurie's playing with her food. That's just what it is. And then when he's actually dead, I do like the idea of like we've taken the power away from him. This guy is meaningless to us.
Here's how I'm going to break down this scene and completely disagree with you.
Yeah, go for it because I'm
She
curious.
is fighting with him, and then she finally gets the upper hand and stabs his hand down. And then she's still fighting with him, and he's still harming her. And then she finally gets his other hand down. And then for survival, she has to go for the legs. And then after that, she could play with his food and start like cutting him. No, she goes for the throat. And then he still doesn't die, and he tries to choke her out, and she almost dies. And then and then she slits his wrist. So I don't agree with
but
her.
isn't it a little like stupid, right? Like this
No!
idea that no, because here's the thing. There are scenes where she is just talking to Michael as Michael's pinned down.
Yes.
And the whole time I know what's about to happen. I know Michael Myers has to give one more fight or two more fights, however many more there are. Like, so I'm like, okay, they're doing all this scene, but has she just like kills him instead of talking? It's this whole idea, right? Of just like the joke of like, and it's always kind of the reverse of this. This is the villain saying their evil plan, and then this gives the hero time to escape or think of a way out of it. That's essentially what Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode is doing in this scene. This is everything. This is I'm monologuing right now, and Michael Myers is just kind of looking around like, well, maybe if I just like throw the axe, or not throw the axe, but you know, tear off my hand and risk it that way, like I can escape this way. And it's just like, kill him already. Just kill him.
She does the same thing in H20.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't bother me. Again, maybe it's the subtlety of H20, where I just don't think the scene's not as violent in H20.
She hits him with the car, and he so happens to get pinned by a tree.
Yeah, but you don't see him being like you see him being
yes,
pinned by the
tree.
You see him being pinned by the tree, but you don't see his guts like flying everywhere.
What?
There's a certain level of just Listen, I'm in the complete minority of this opinion. I 100% I understand this. To me, I just didn't need to see Laurie having this like 10-minute like scene with Michael. I just could have just like
it's been 44 years of him not having satisfying deaths and him killing people. We all needed to see it. We needed to see him be paraded around town and then be thrown into the metal shredder.
Yeah, like I said, this whole ending just feels a little hokey to me. It's not my it's not even how I would have ended the franchise. It's just
not your Halloween.
Yeah, it's not my Halloween. I prefer my Halloween with Michael Myers burning alive. And then you go for the throat. But like I said, it's just I'm not going to win the fans' vote on this one. I totally know on that. I just totally know everyone's hearing this opinion and they're going to think a few things of me. They're going to think either he's too sensitive to violence, which and why are you watching this film, or two, you just don't understand what we want to see from a Halloween film. I probably largely agree that yes, you're right. I did not want to see how this part of this film played out. Maybe it is just also straight up the idea of like this film becomes one thing in the last 20 minutes. And it's like, I think the weird thing about this ending is it's just like, this is obviously like what the whole film is building up to, but it never is satisfactory, like paid off for the rest of the film. The rest of the film has almost nothing to do with Laurie and Michael together. It just so happens that by the end of this film, it's like, okay, Michael needs to die, and it needs to be at the hands of Laurie, or vice versa.
Hmm.
That it just like it just happens, and it just feels like, okay, we have to do it this way, we have to get it there, we have to end it this way, done, 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 and it's just like, okay, but where was that in the rest of the film? Like if that's like your finale, like I don't know, it almost feels like the Laurie Strode is an afterthought in this movie.
I can. I more agree with that with kills than I do with ends.
That's
Because
fair. I think that's a fair argument. I don't have. Sorry, go for it. You were saying why you agree with it for kills. I do. I
well,
did
just
interrupt you.
because we spend much more time with Lori and her daily life trying to cope and trying to reinvent herself, and how she has been canceled because she is the other end of the canceled culture.
God, I do not like this scene.
I hate the victim blaming.
I
And
hate the victim blaming. I absolutely the black woman coming up to Lori outside the supermarket, I
yeah,
think is bad. I think that is horrendous writing.
it's but it's not just her. Like,
No, it's other
Cor-
people. She's just kind of the most blatant character who does it.
yeah. So, man, this movie's confused
Yeah,
on.
it when this film tries to be a commentary, I think it's all over the place, even if some of the commentary is interesting. When it's trying to be a Halloween film, I don't buy into much of the film. And so for me it's just I said it in my review. It was a 2-star review. I like this movie more than I like Kills. I do. I think it's a fundamentally better and more interesting movie. As a conclusion, I think it's pretty weak. As a film, I think you're right. It's muddled. I end up leaving this film, and I have things that I really enjoy. I have things that I dislike, but I don't have any strong opinions on it either way. Like, it's not like something where you say anything that you're in pro of, and I'm like, I disagree with you fundamentally. Like, this doesn't make sense. I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, yeah, I see your point. I just don't like it because I just didn't like the way it's filmed or directed or just written. It's a hard film to talk about in that sense.
Um, hey Ben, my
Yeah.
phone's about to die. So should we start wrapping it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. This is our discussion on Halloween. Can we just do one last thing before we head out?
Yeah, this is our finale.
This is
So
our finale. Let's talk about it. Let's just do it real quick. Rank the 13 Halloween films.
okay, I don't know.
Okay, first, how much phone battery do you have? Because we could do this one way.
I have 4%, but I can make it.
Okay, here's how we're going to do this. Halloween 1, obviously number 1.
Yes,
Halloween 2, I'd have it somewhere in the middle to low. Probably like bottom 5.
I have it bottom 5 too. No,
Okay.
I have it in like the middle, but
Okay.
lower middle. Lower
Let's do it
middle.
this way. Halloween 5, worst film, right?
Yeah.
Halloween 5 we have at number 13. Halloween 1 we have at number 1. Let's go number 2. What do you think is the second best film in this series? I'd probably lean towards Halloween 2018 too.
Yeah, this one.
Halloween 2018, which makes the third best. I would personally have Return of Michael Myers. I think a lot of people would also have H2O.
I would put H20.
I would.
Just oh, I almost said just because of the mask, but then I remembered the H20 mask. I would probably say H20 for Jamie Lee Curtis.
I would agree. So I'm totally fine with Halloween 2018, H20 being our 3. 4, are you fine doing Return of Michael Myers?
Yeah.
So that's our number 4. This is where it starts getting interesting because these films become much less.
I know what my number 5 is.
Okay, I know what my number 5 is too. Mine's is Halloween 2.
Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We can lock that in.
And then for 6, I would probably do either ends or kills.
I would do ends. I would feel more comfortable putting ends
Okay, then ends.
at 6.
And then kills is like bottom 5 for me.
Let's do 7. Personally, I would put Curse of Michael Myers here.
Really?
I would. I like the mythology.
You like the mythology of Halloween?
I think it's interesting.
I would put Resurrection.
I would venture to give you Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 before I give you Resurrection here. But
Okay, fine. Halloween 6.
okay, let's do Halloween 6 there. Okay. Now it's the fight that we've postponed. So number 8, is it Resurrection or Zombie?
Resurrection. Because
I
I enjoy Resurrection more than I like the Rob Zombie's Halloween one.
That's fine, and Halloween, his 2007 version, becomes a remake by the second half. I
Yeah.
am fine then. Are you fine with me putting that at number 9, Halloween 2007?
Yeah.
Let's do number 10. God, we have. So what we have left is 10, 11, 12. So we have Halloween 2, the original one,
Oh,
Halloween Season of the Witch, and we have. What are we missing?
Halloween
Oh,
Kills.
Halloween Kills.
Halloween 2.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't like the movie, but it's probably better than the other ones. I listen.
And
I really dislike Season of the Witch.
then let's do Kills and then Season of the Witch.
Is there any argument that you want to put Season of the Witch higher?
No,
Okay.
because I don't like it.
Okay. Season of the Witch 12. Number 11, we have Kills. So let me read the list from bottom to top. Coming in at number 13, we have Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Coming in at number 12, we have Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. At me in the comments, I don't fucking care. Number 11, we have Halloween Kills. Number 10, we have
Halloween 2.
Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2 from 1981. Coming in at number 9, we have Halloween, which is Rob Zombie's version. Coming in at number 8, people are going to be pissed that we have it this high. Resurrection. We have Halloween Resurrection coming in our top 8.
People are going to be pissed that you have Halloween Resurrection higher than Halloween 2.
They're going to be pissed that I have it above Season of the Witch and probably basically any movie. The fact that it's above Revenge of Michael Myers is probably going to piss off enough people. I don't care. I like Resurrection enough. Number 7, we have Halloween, which is... Why did I not label these? Number 7...
Oh, that was Halloween 6.
Yeah, sorry. Oh my God. Thank you for saying that. So let me reiterate. Number 8 is Halloween Resurrection. Number 7 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers.
No.
No, sorry. Number 7 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Number 6 is Halloween Ends. Number 5 is The Return of Michael Myers. Sorry. Jesus Christ. Number 5 is Halloween 2. Rob Zombie's version. Number 4 is The Return of Michael Myers. Number 3 is H20. Number 2 is 2018. And number 1 is 1978's Halloween. Let me say that one more time, just real quick. Halloween 20 H20. Sorry, Halloween 2018, Halloween H20, Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 2, Halloween Ends, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween's Resurrection, Halloween 2007, Halloween 2, 1981, Halloween Kills, Halloween Season of the Witch, and coming in dead last is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. That's our list. I'll have a visual on here to make this easier for people trying to follow my nonsense and scribbles on a note card that I ran out of room on and forgot to be labeling it. But with that said, Tris, thanks for joining me in this whole series.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun watching all of these movies again.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again next Halloween for a different franchise. Maybe one that doesn't have 13 installments. Maybe one that has like a reasonable 6.
You know what doesn't have 13 installments in it? Friday the 13th.
I was thinking, doesn't it? But it has like 9, right?
That's 12.
I'd like one that has like just like we can do it once a week. Maybe 5 weeks.
We could do The Conjuring, but
We could do the Conjuring.
I think it's at 8 now.
Yeah, I mean we gotta look into it. We'll find the franchise. But thank you again for joining me this series, and thank you all for watching this series. This is the Beniverse marathon on the Halloween films. I'm coming back at you. Branson will be joining me for my next episode, back for Ben and Brand See a Movie, and I think we're kicking it off November. I want to confirm it, but I think we're doing Black Panther to start the month. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. This is Roommate Tris. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. Thank you all for watching. Take care. Bye bye.